Selecting a high-quality avocado could be a challenge for some people at the supermarket. Unlike other fruit, there's no dead giveaway. They're hard as rock, they don't give off a smell, and they don't change color when they're ready to eat. Today, I'm going to show you some of the types of damage you might find on an avocado at the grocery store. And by the end of this video, you'll know what types of damage are innocuous and you could ignore, but also what types of damage are a giveaway that the avocado is bad and you should leave it on the shelf. For the most part, there are 4 different causes of damage on avocados: fungus, critters, exposure to the elements like wind and sun, and handling damage. Here's an example of damage caused by fungus. This is very natural to avocados. If you've ever tried to grow an avocado plant or tree in your backyard, you've probably even seen evidence on the leaves. Even the nicest, cleanest avocados will show a little bit of darkening from fungus, which is no big deal. But if you see one like this, where it's really a lot of dark, it's either black or brown, and you could see like cracking and it's like hard and scabbing, this is one you want to leave on the shelf. You don't want to buy this. This type of damage from the skin will actually go through and damage that section of your piece of fruit. You don't want to buy that. Now, if there's only 1 or 2 left and there's just a little bit like this, your fruit will be fine. But once it gets to this deep scabbing like you see here, no good. This kind of damage, this fungus, is totally natural. It happens to all avocado trees that are outdoors. And if you happen to be a backyard grower and you notice your fruit is getting scarred up like this, or your leaves are starting to show, a little bit of fungus damage, this can be easily remedied by spraying with copper anti-fungal spray once every 30 to 45 days. So whether you want to spray and keep your fruit and your leaves squeaky clean, or you're okay kind of discarding some of the ugly parts of the fruit, that's a personal choice and that's up to you. The second type of damage comes from critters. Human beings aren't the only species that loves to eat avocados. There's all kinds of bugs and worms and beetles that'll try to burrow in to your fruit. Now, odds are, unless someone really wasn't paying attention, odds are you're not going to find a piece of fruit at the grocery store shelf that has had some type of animal burrowing into it. That will have been weeded out in an inspection process. They might let, a little bit of a dirty fruit slide through to you or something like that. But this kind of thing, you run into like food handling violations and stuff like that. But if you see a piece of fruit, even if you're out in your backyard, if you're a grower yourself, and you see where something's tried to burrow in, like this here, that's a piece of fruit that should be discarded, because I've seen where not only do they get through the skin, but they kind of work their way in, and a lot of times I've had them lay eggs. I've even seen breakouts of maggots inside of an avocado that's been, infiltrated by a critter. Another style of critter damage comes from squirrels. And again, it's unlikely at the supermarket you'll find evidence of any type of squirrel damage, but here's an example where a squirrel was trying to bite into this fruit. You see, there's his little tooth marks. Or sometimes I'll find a fruit opened up and, where he actually got in there and ate them. Now, this piece of fruit here, the squirrel bit there, the squirrel bit there. Again, my wife and I will cut the rest of this away and eat it. That might gross out some people. Most people maybe wouldn't do that. But if you're a backyard grower and you have just a little bit of squirrel damage, I wouldn't worry about it. But again, if I was at the supermarket and I saw any kind of damage, any type of holes in the skin like this, I wouldn't even try to decide where it came from. I would pass over that piece of fruit. The third and most common type of damage, and this is probably the type of damage you will see on a shelf at a supermarket, because it is by and large cosmetic and it mostly does not affect the fruit underneath the skin, is damage from exposure to the elements, specifically wind and sun. If you've ever seen an avocado tree, you'll know that they have a lot of leaves. In fact, avocado trees have so many leaves, sometimes it makes it hard to spot the avocados hanging in the tree. They're kind of camouflaged in there. And those leaves protect the avocados from the sun. Sometimes we get a storm, or for whatever reason, you get a piece of fruit that's exposed to the sun. And you see, see how it's green on this side? This happens to be the one that was not only affected by a squirrel, but it was also bleached a little bit by the sun. So if you see that dark green, look at this part was exposed and getting hit with sunlight. This part was in the shade of the leaves of the tree. So you might see a little bit of yellow on your fruit. And if you just contrast the difference in color there, that's caused by exposure to the sun. And that's no big deal, especially if you only just have a little spot like that. This would not scare me away from eating a piece of fruit at all. And this type of damage probably isn't obvious to most people as damage. Most people probably just assume it's the natural coloration of the fruit. But it's not. This is actually sun bleaching. Another much more obvious type of damage that is caused by exposure to the elements is caused by the wind. And it has to do with the way avocados grow. Look at these guys hang like this, like a little cluster of grapes, right? And when the wind blows, look at, they knock into each other. See that? And if you look here, where these two fruit are knocking into each other, let me do that again. Okay, see those two? Right here, look at. Dang it! Oopsie. But you saw there where those two pieces of fruit were bouncing into each other, right? Knock, 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 knock. Well, look at what it did. It actually creates a scar. And here's the corresponding scar on the other piece of fruit. So these two avocados were banging into each other for the past 6 months, every time the wind blew. And what you'll wind up with are these little kiss marks. See, this is where a piece of fruit was banging and rubbing into another. Here's one on the other side. See, there's one, there's another. So this avocado was hanging on a cluster just like these guys are. And when the wind would blow, like here's probably a good example too, the way these two are right here together like that, right? If I turn that, you'll see that little scar there, right here, where these two guys knock together. So if you're in the supermarket and you see these little kiss marks like this, that is 100% cosmetic. There's no reason to shy away with this. There is no problem with the flesh underneath. Now, the avocados don't only bounce against other avocados. They will also rub against the stick. So you see this stick right here, this branch, right? This, again, for months, this piece of fruit has been twirling around out there. Every time the wind blows, chick, 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 right? Now, this is pretty extreme, and it's doubtful that this would make it to the shelf at the supermarket. But a lot of times, you'll see just a little bit of a line, you know, where the fruit was rubbing on a branch like this, you know, something like that. You'll see just a little bit of a line. And again, just like these kiss marks, a little bit of a line where it was rubbing against a branch does not harm the flesh inside. The fourth and final type of damage I'd like to show you is damage that comes from handling. So we're out there picking fruit, we're packing it, it gets stuck on trucks, it gets put in coolers, it gets shipped all over the place. You have grocery store workers taking the boxes out, putting them on shelves. There's all kinds of opportunities for harm to come to your fruit. Some of it is innocuous, and others is the type of harm you'll want to avoid. Now, one thing you'll commonly see, and sometimes it's hard to distinguish between whether it's squirrel damage or whether that's handling damage, is a lot of times you'll find a little nick like this in a piece of fruit. Now, if you look closely, this is right near the stem, right? So let me see if I can find a stem here. So this guy was on the tree, right? Hanging on the tree right here by his stem, and he's got this piece of damage here. This damage is caused by the picker, and let me show you what happens. A lot of times we're using a basket like this, and it's got two razor blades, right? And what we try to do is reach up into the tree and get this basket around the piece of fruit like this. And then when we pull the basket back, we actually cut through the stem, and the fruit drops into the basket. But every now and then, we go a little too high on the piece of fruit, and the two razor blades in here will actually nick the fruit and leave a little cut that looks like that. So if you see a cut and it looks more like a scratch, whereas you could see here, that's an actual like bite, right? But this is more of like a scratch. That type of damage can be ignored. If you see something like that, that just happened when they were picking the fruit. They nicked it, and you could take that home and eat it. There'll be no impact on the fruit underneath the skin. Now, when I pick a fruit and I nick it like this, unless it's a very subtle, small nick, I'll typically discard this and save it for us to eat or give it to friends. I typically don't sell fruit when it has this. But if you did come across a piece of fruit that's got a little nick like this, it's not going to hurt you. Now, the good news is 95% of what we grow comes out nice and clean. And the 5% that's nasty gets rejected anyway. So it's unlikely that stuff's going to hit the shelf at your grocery store anyhow. That stuff gets sent to like cosmetic companies and stuff. They put it in shampoo. Now, if these avocados look a little different to you, it's because they're green-skinned avocados or Florida avocados. This is a Monroe variety. This is a Choquette variety. And this is two of probably a dozen or so varieties we grow here at Sleepy Lizard Avocado Farm. And if you would like to try some of these varieties, go to guacfarm.com. GUACFARM.com. We have different varieties coming in and out of season starting in June and going all the way to January. And in the summertime, we sell tropical fruit. We also sell our t-shirts and other kinds of merch. But by far, our biggest seller is the avocados. Speaking of which, I got about 500 pounds of orders that needs to be dropped off at the post office before it closes. So while I go drop off my orders, you go to guacfarm.com. And I will see you on the next video.